Hello, welcome back to Legally Dephine. My name is Dephine and this is Introduction to Law. In this video, we are going to be discussing the sources of law. For easier digestibility, this lecture shall be in two parts. The first part we are going to discuss legislation and common law, and the second part shall cover custom and authoritative texts. Legislation is also referred to as statutory law, and it covers those rules of law made directly by the legislature. The state organ responsible for lawmaking is called the legislature. The legislature consists of the legislative authorities, and the legislative authority is described in Section 117 of the Constitution as follows. The legislative authority of Zimbabwe is derived from the people and is vested and exercised in accordance with this constitution by the legislature. The legislative authority confers on the legislature the power to amend this constitution in accordance with Section 328, to make laws for the peace, order, and good governance of Zimbabwe, and to confer subordinate legislative powers upon another body or authority in accordance with Section 134. Legislation by Parliament is embodied in a specialized document called Acts of Parliament. It is only through these acts that the Parliament can make law as per Section 131 of the Constitution as follows. Parliament's legislative authority is exercised through the enactment of Acts of Parliament. Parliament is also entitled to delegate its lawmaking power to another body or authority in terms of Section 134 of the Constitution. When these authorities exercise this delegated power, they create what is called delegated legislation or subsidiary legislation, which is embodied in a specialized legal document called statutory instruments. Accordingly, we have two recognized forms of legislation in Zimbabwe, that is, Acts of Parliament and statutory instruments. A statutory instrument has the same legal status as an Act of Parliament, but it must be consistent with the relevant act delegating the power to make the statutory instrument. The relevant act is called the parent act or the enabling act. A statutory instrument which is consistent with the relevant act is said to be intra vires. On the other hand, a statutory instrument which is inconsistent with the enabling act is said to be ultra vires and is void or invalid. It is important to note that there is a hierarchy in the legislative source of law. Under Zimbabwean law, the Constitution is one piece of legislation that is supreme and overrides all other laws to the contrary. The Constitution is in itself an Act of Parliament, but it is superior to all other Acts of Parliament. Section 2, subsection 1 of the Constitution states that this Constitution is the supreme law of Zimbabwe, and any law, custom, practice, or conduct which is inconsistent with it is invalid to the extent of the inconsistency. Therefore, the Constitution is the supreme law, followed by the Acts of Parliament and then the statutory instruments. So, always remember this hierarchy: Constitution, Acts of Parliament, and the statutory instruments. If an Act of Parliament passes the constitutionality test, it is law for all purposes and cannot be nullified on any other grounds. A statutory instrument should pass both the constitutionality test and the ultra vires test. Now, how do we cite our legislation? For the Acts of Parliament, we cite by reference to the chapter. For example, the High Court Act, Chapter 7.06. Statutory instruments have no chapter number. Therefore, reference is made to the title, the calendar year, and its number in the calendar year in which it was gazetted. For example, the Deeds Registries Regulations 2018, it's SI 236 of 2018. So, one may wonder if these Acts of Parliament fall into disuse. An Act of Parliament does not fall into disuse. It only comes to an end when it is repealed, and this position is enshrined in our Constitution. Secondly, an Act of Parliament may also come to an end if it is supposed to be of limited duration. For example, in other instances, an Act of Parliament may state that it shall be in force for a given period of time. How do we describe the contents of different statutes? Here is a table which shows how different statutes are described. So, this pretty much covers it for the legislation, and always remember the hierarchy: Constitution, Acts of Parliament, and statutory instruments. Now, let's move on to common law. If you find this lecture beneficial, please hit on the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to click on the notification bell so you never miss on our latest lectures. Your support greatly helps us continue with our work here on Legally Dephine. Let's continue with the lecture. Common law can be described as that part of the law which is not derived from legislation, but comes from the principles of law made by judges in resolving the issues brought before them in the courts. Under Zimbabwean and South African law, the common law is made up of two components of non-statutory law, namely, number 1, rules and principles made by judges in previous cases, and number 2, rules and principles reflected in that body of law called the Roman Dutch law, which is not reflected in any previous decisions. Under Zimbabwean law, only a portion of the common law is judicial precedent. When a court ascribes a meaning to a given provision of an enactment, that meaning may bind future courts. That situation is what is referred to as judicial precedent. In countries that were colonized, including those in Africa, the colonial power imposed a Western legal system. As a rule, the imposed legal system required the colony to adopt some specified foreign laws as at the time of the imposition. The common law of a colony was therefore made up of two components. The first one is the principles of law contained in the foreign law as at the time of imposition, and the second one is the law derived from judicial precedent developed after the date of the imposition. This was and still is the situation in Zimbabwe. Section 192 of the Constitution tells us that the law to be administered by the courts in Zimbabwe is the law that was in force at the effective date as subsequently modified. The effective date being talked about in Section 192 of the Constitution is 10 June 1891. By 10 June 1891, the law which was applicable at the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa consisted of Roman Dutch law and substantial English law draftings. Make sure to read the history of Roman Dutch law to get a full understanding. Given that the common law develops through previous judicial decisions, some critical points need to be made about this process. It is not everything in a previous judicial decision that is binding on a future court. For a proposition to be binding, it must meet these following requirements. The first requirement is that it must be a proposition of law, not a proposition of fact. Requirement number 2. The proposition must be part of the ratio decidendi, the reason for the decision. The ratio decidendi is the principle of law upon which the decision is based. However, in a judgment, it is common for a judge to make statements of law in passing which do not form part of the ratio decidendi. The statements of such nature are called obiter dictum. The distinction between the ratio decidendi and obiter dictum is central to the operation of law. If the other requirements are met, it is only the ratio decidendi which is binding on future courts, while the obiter dictum can only be used as persuasive authority. Remember, some of our legal terms are Latin terms and the pronunciation may not be so accurate. Requirement number 3 is that there must be no material differences between the previous case and the case in question. Where there is material difference between the two cases, the previous case is distinguished and the precedent made is not binding. Whether or not a difference is material depends on the circumstances of each case, and there is no test to test whether there is a material difference or not. Finally, requirement number 4. The precedent should be binding on the court deciding the case in question. There is a hierarchy of courts, and a court of law is only bound by a precedent if the precedent emanates from a court which is of a higher level in terms of the hierarchy. However, there are some exceptions to this statement. The Supreme Court is the highest court of the land, and its precedents are binding on all the lower courts. The High Court binds all lower courts as long as its precedent is not inconsistent with any precedent of the Supreme Court. The High Court is not bound by its previous decisions, but it is bound by the previous decisions of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is also not bound by its previous decisions, although it generally follows them. There have been also instances where the Supreme Court had to depart from its previous decisions. For example, in the cases of Katekwe vs. Mchabaiwa and later in the case of Magaya vs. Magaya. Make sure to read these cases because they shall be useful in the future lectures. A magistrate court does not create binding precedent and is in itself not bound by any of its previous decisions. However, it is expected to be consistent in its decision-making. A decision of a magistrate court is also not precedent for lower courts such as the Small Claims Court and the local courts on customary law. Regarding tribunals created by statute, the general rule is that they do not create precedent binding on themselves except in one situation. This situation is when there is a hierarchy of tribunals, in which case an appellate tribunal creates binding precedent on a lower tribunal. For example, the Labor Court. The Labor Court is established in terms of the Labor Act, and its decisions create binding precedent for labor officers and arbitrators deciding labor matters at a lower level. Our courts are not bound by any decisions of foreign courts. However, because of the nature of our common law, the decisions from the highest courts of South Africa and England are very persuasive authority. This marks the end of common law, and don't forget to read Katekwe vs. Mchabaiwa and Magaya vs. Magaya on instances where the Supreme Court had to depart from its previous decision. Also, don't forget to check out the Roman Dutch law. The next video shall be covering the remaining two sources of law, custom and authoritative text, and see you on that video.